Do it, Cole.
Yeah.
Cole, you're on top. Hey, there's seahorses having sex.
What's this called? The reproductive one?
There's a hydra having sex. Not really. You know what? Hydras reproduce by budding.
What page are we on?
It's just budding off a new hydra. This is page 41. Some animals do asexual reproduction. What's that? Chapter 41. And hydras will just bud off a new hydra. But that's a clone of the parent. Why isn't that usually done?
Because it's just one thing.
What's the disadvantage of asexual reproduction?
Variation.
No differentiation.
Yeah, variation, right?
No variation. If the kid's just like the adult, and the conditions change, where it kills the adult, it'll kill all their kids too. And then they'll all go extinct. That's not good for survival of the species. So, better if you have some variation. How do we get variation? Mate with another individual that's different and have the kid turn out with some of each of your stuff. That would make a kind of a different organism that would have some variation.
So in our last exam essay, we had to write about how asexual is better than sexual, and why is it better if it's not better?
Yeah, there are some advantages to asexual reproduction. What's one advantage?
You don't have to look for a mate.
You don't have to find a mate. That's an advantage.
Reproduce faster.
It's faster. Just bud one off. You know? Bacteria can reproduce really quick. So there are some advantages to asexual reproduction. There's advantages and disadvantages. But lots of organisms use sexual reproduction. Especially ones with long lifetimes that don't reproduce very rapidly, so how do you get any variation?
That's crazy.
Dragonfly sex?
What's going on?
Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah, I have that.
Like always holding on to the stem.
This is the
Pretty
tail
funny.
of... I don't know, what's... This is the tail,
Wait, that's a female?
this is the tail of that?
I don't know.
I don't know what they're doing. Let's see what we do. This is the male reproductive system. The testes are where the sperm is made. The sperm aren't stored in the testes, though. They're stored in this thing. It's called the epididymis. And the sperm sit there, and remember, the sperm are haploid cells. They have half the number of chromosomes. And, because they're going to combine with the egg that has half the number of chromosomes. And when it's ready for the sperm to come out, and the guy's having sex, the sperm come up through this tube here. It's called the Vas Deferens. You may have heard of the Vas Deferens. Sometimes older men have it cut in an operation called a vasectomy.
Oh.
And the doctor goes in with a scalpel, and he goes in right here from behind. This is the scrotum. And he goes in and he cuts, and then he cuts the Vas Deferens, and he ties each end off. And now the sperm can't get out. So the guy can't have kids. Of course, it didn't work with my buddy, because the thing grew back together. So the next thing you know, his wife was pregnant again. He thought she was cheating on him. It wasn't. It was that the vasectomy didn't take. Anyway, the sperm keep going, and they curl around like this, and the sperm get to right about here, and there's a gland right here called the seminal vesicle that squirts out a sugary fluid that the sperm use for energy. And there's another gland here called the prostate gland that squirts out a milky fluid that causes the sperm to be able to survive in the female tract. See, the female tract is very acidic. It would normally kill sperm, but the prostate gland secretions help the sperm survive because it's basic and it neutralizes the acidity of the vagina.
What is a seminal vesicle spray at?
A sugary fluid, rich in the sugar fructose that helps the sperm survive. Prostate gland you hear about a lot in guys because it tends to become cancerous in old age. And guys have to check their prostate. You know how the doctor checks your prostate? He shoves his finger in the anus here, and he feels the prostate gland with his finger. You can kind of push the walls of the rectum here can move, and you can kind of feel the prostate gland.
Ugh.
There's a lot of jokes on that about TV. You know, the doctor does his glove and he goes, "Pow!" And the guy's like, "Oh." So that's what you guys have to look forward to. But you don't really have to get it done until you're a little bit older. In your 40s and 50s and such, you got to go in there. But if the prostate gland becomes cancerous, it can kill you because prostate cancer spreads easily. Some people will have their prostate taken out because it becomes cancerous. Once you get your prostate taken out, though, you usually can't get an erection, so you can't have sex anymore. So a lot of guys don't want to get their prostate taken out. Another thing that happens is the prostate gland expands when you get older. It gets bigger and bigger. Have you ever seen that commercial that says, "I thought I had a going problem. I had a growing problem. My prostate gland was growing." Have you ever seen that?
You know
As
what?
the prostate gland increases in size, it squeezes off the urethra, which is the tube that takes pee out. This is the bladder. The tube takes pee out of the bladder, can get squeezed off by a growing prostate. This is why your granddad has to get up and go to the bathroom 4 times a night. It's because the prostate has grown and squeezed off the urethra, and he can't empty his bladder all the way when he pees. This pretty much happens in all old men. Something like 90% of them have a prostate gland that grows and squeezes off the urethra. So that's another thing you guys have to look forward to. Us guys have to look forward to. So we have the penis here. Penis. Did I ever tell you about my teacher that used to say penis?
The penis necklace?
Penis. And the penis has erectile tissue in it. That's this red stuff here, and here is erectile tissue, and it'll fill up with blood when the guy gets an erection, and that enables him to have sex. And it's interesting. I'll show you another picture of the penis. Let's get another picture of the penis. Oh, I thought I had it. No? That's the female part. I thought I had a cut penis. Penis that was cut in half. So you could look at the erectile tissue.
Is that the one?
Yeah,
That's
right
not
there.
it, though.
No, the one beside
Oh,
it.
this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So here's, if you cut a penis in half, here's what you'd see. 2 upper layers of erectile tissue, 1 lower layer of erectile tissue. The urethra goes through this one. There are 2 big blood vessels, there and there. You can barely see them. That will leak out blood when the guy gets excited.
Hey, the septum,
And it causes, and the blood gets into this area and causes the erection.
What's the one below it? That's the urethra?
That's the urethra. That's where the pee goes through. And the sperm on their way out.
Wait,
Doesn't
you said
the
there's-
septum separate the heart too?
There's 2 upper layers and 1
Septum just means separation.
Okay.
You said there's 2 upper layers and 1 lower layer, and where does the blood
Yeah,
come
you
from?
see them right there? 2 upper layers, 1 lower layer. The blood comes out of these blood vessels that are here. It leaks out. There's a drug they recently discovered. The best-selling drug ever, except for aspirin, which is called Viagra. And what it does is it lets blood into the penis but doesn't let it out. Somehow it squeezes the muscles off for the vessels that lead out. and it doesn't squeeze the vessels off for the vessels that go in. And so blood goes into the penis but doesn't come out, and it causes an erection. And it makes it so old men can have sex. Because when you're old, you have trouble getting an erection. Your muscles on the walls of your vessels lose strength, and they can't squeeze as well as they used to, so you have trouble getting an erection. But that drug helps, and so now old men can have sex. Your great-grandparents probably having sex right now since you're at school.
What happens like if you have like all the commercials like if you have an erection lasting for more than 4
hours, yeah.
So what happens? Like, is that really bad for you?
Yeah, I'm not sure why that's bad, but it doesn't sound good to me.
Blood is stuck there.
Blood's stuck there, or maybe the cells will start dying, and that could be a problem.
That happens on Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That happens in the that movie where, you know, the movie where the guy is like the one selling it. You know, have you seen that movie with Anne Hathaway and she's dating the guy who sells Viagra? Yeah.
I haven't seen that. Every guy is actually born with foreskin. That means a layer of skin covering the end of the penis, and it's to keep it clean because our caveman ancestors walked around naked, or sometimes with very little clothes. And the penis, if you sit down, is rubbing against the ground. And dirt will get up there, cause problems if it's not covered, and so that's what the foreskin is for. We don't really need it nowadays because we got clothes on and we're not dragging our penis around in the dirt. So you don't really need it. So a lot of guys have that cut off at birth in an operation called a circumcision.
Yeah.
It used to be just a Jewish thing, but now pretty much everybody does it.
For the longest time, I thought Jewish people were the ones who didn't do it.
No, they do.
I learned that like 2 days ago.
They can't do
No, that sounds really weird.
Questions about the male system? We'll see the female system. Oh, by the way, the scrotum is there because sperm, for some reason, don't develop well at 98.6 degrees. They got to be a little cooler. So in all mammals, the testes hang down away from the body so they can be a little cooler. Just a couple degrees cooler is all it takes. But it is true that if you wear tight underwear, you may have a problem forming the sperm. And there's some TV shows that are funny about that kind of thing. Usually that's not the case. Even tight underwear, they'll form.
So the sperm is kept in the testes, but then comes out of that tube?
Yeah, the sperm are actually stored in the epididymis.
Epididymis, okay.
They're made in the testes and stored in the epididymis.
Okay.
Here's a little video showing you how they're made. Remember meiosis, that process?
Yeah.
Spermatogonia are the cells from which sperm cells arise.
Watch
The
it.
spermatogonia divide by mitosis. One daughter cell remains a spermatogonium, and the other becomes a primary spermatocyte. The primary spermatocyte divides by meiosis to form secondary spermatocytes. Secondary spermatocytes divide again to form spermatids. The spermatids differentiate into sperm cells.
So,
That's
y'all
right.
remember one cell becoming 4 cells? We go from 46 chromosomes to 23. That's what's happening. This is inside the testes of the male. And once those sperm form, they're stored in the epididymis for about 2 weeks. They'll die after a couple weeks, but new ones are constantly being made. Men make about 100 million sperm a day.
But
Question?
So when it goes to the Vas Deferens,
Yes.
and then to the ejaculatory duct, and then to the prostate gland.
Yeah, they're actually going through. They're staying in this tube, and the tube goes through this, or goes by this gland that secretes stuff, and the tube actually goes through the prostate gland, which secretes stuff, and then eventually to the urethra and out.
So it goes by the duct and through the tube.
Well, the ejaculatory duct. No, it goes through the duct. You're right.
So it goes through both of them.
Yeah, it's going through this hole. Exactly. Let's see the female plumbing. Oh, there's female. Big enough for you? I can make it bigger. The ovary, that's what the female uses to make eggs. There are 2 ovaries, of course, just like there are 2 testes. It's only showing 1 here. The ovary spits out an egg about once per month. And the egg comes out, and it's pulled in by these little finger-like projections here called fimbriae that are on the uterine tube. This is called the uterine tube, also called the oviduct, also called the fallopian tube. There's a lot of names for it. Just like they call me, Mr. Willis,
and DJ Master.
and DJ Grandmaster T. Some things just have 2 names. Anyway, the egg is pulled in here and it travels down. There are little cilia inside this that push the egg along. And right here, if the guy and the woman are having sex, is where sperm will meet the egg. Because the sperm were deposited by the guy's penis right here in the vagina. The vagina, the sperm get deposited in there during sex. And they crawl up here, crawl through the cervix, which is the opening into the uterus. And they crawl through the uterus, and the sperm go up the fallopian tube, and hopefully they'll find an egg there if they're lucky. If not, if the egg is released and the woman hasn't been having sex, then the egg will just die after about 2 days. And it takes the sperm can live up here for about 2 days also. So there's about a 4-day window there where if you avoid having sex, you won't get pregnant. It happens in the middle of your menstrual cycle, which we're going to talk about next, when the egg is released. Now, if the egg is fertilized, it continues on down and starts dividing. Forms a zygote, then 2 cells, then 4, then 8, 16, and so forth. And it will implant itself in the wall of the uterus here. Actually, it doesn't always implant. Maybe half the time it's able to implant itself. And then the baby will start developing here in the uterus.
If it doesn't implant itself, the baby doesn't start.
That's right. Then the ball of dividing cells will die if it doesn't implant because it won't have enough nutrition. And you'll never know you were pregnant. But you weren't really pregnant. Pregnancy is technically only occurs if the embryo implants. And then it'll start growing, and it gets real big, of course, when you're pregnant. It's your stomach's sticking out and you got a big baby in there. But at first it starts at the size of a period at the end of a sentence in your book. That's the size of a zygote.
So that thing that you're on, that is what gets super big?
This uterus, yes. This uterus will stretch when you're pregnant. The walls of it can stretch to huge sizes. And this is muscle, by the way, muscle tissue on the outside. The uterus is very muscular. And the uterus will contract, push the baby out. When it's signaled from the brain, will signal it to start giving birth. And the vagina is where the baby comes out, so the baby has to come out this. It's also called the birth canal. And the baby comes out, and you're born. Yay, baby. And there's the little clitoris. That's a woman's version of a penis. The embryo has a little thing that looks like that. Every fetus. And if it becomes a man, it gets bigger. But if it's a woman, it stays small. And that's, an organ of sexual stimulation. So that the woman will want to have sex and have babies. That's how Mother Nature keeps people having babies. And the labia here on the outside are just, again, protective structures. Our caveman ancestors sat down on the ground naked. You don't want to get dirt up in here. So you have these labia that are just flaps of skin, just like the foreskin on a man, that protects the area from getting dirty. There's also a bunch of acid in the vagina, secretions, acidic secretions that keep things from growing there. Do you want to see what an ovary looks like inside a person?
Okay.
Some surgical video footage.
Oh, I don't think
That's the uterus. That's a fallopian tube. And there's an ovary. The white thing.
That's bigger than I thought
There's the ovary.
Whoa, why did it just do that?
Around like
They're
this.
moving it around.
Yeah, he's moving it around.
Oh,
He's looking
okay.
at
I
it.
thought it like.
Wants to make sure. Wants to make sure it works
Are we
right.
watching a birth video?
Not today.
I heard. Oh god.
I'll show you one.
I've actually watched a birth video before.
Okay, let me show you the.
Nikki.
Let me show you why you have a menstrual cycle, ladies. It's from hormones. There's 4 hormones involved, and they come from the pituitary gland.
Oh wow.
So this is the pituitary.
Holy. It's like a chunk of my hair.
Quiet, please.
I can't.
And the pituitary releases, and down here I'll draw some ovaries and a uterus.
There you
I'm a great artist. Here's an ovary, and here's a little fallopian tube, little fimbriae. Here's a fallopian tube, and here's the uterus. There's another ovary on the other side. This great 3rd grade drawing. And here's the vagina. We'll put V there for vagina. And so what happens is the pituitary gland, at the beginning of your cycle, releases a hormone. It's called FSH. That stands for follicle stimulating hormone. Now in guys, it causes the testes to make sperm. But in girls, FSH goes to the ovary and tells a follicle to start maturing. Now a follicle is a container that holds an egg. And so FSH is a hormonal signal that tells that follicle to start maturing. And what happens is the follicle just grows bigger and bigger. And it's got an egg in the middle of it. And this takes a couple of weeks here. This follicle will get bigger and bigger and bigger because of the FSH signal that came along through the blood. The follicle has cells surrounding it, which they show right here. You see, here's the original small follicle, and here it is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And there are cells all around the outside, and these cells emit a hormone of their own. The follicular cells squirt out a hormone called estrogen. Now, ladies, estrogen gives you all your female characteristics. It makes your boobs bigger. It makes your voice lower. Everything that happens when you go through puberty. Gives you pubic hair and stuff. Estrogen is the female hormone. It makes you female. But also what it does is it tells the walls of the uterus to start to grow in size. The cells on the walls of the uterus expand and grow and get bigger. And what this is doing, it's giving a cushion for an embryo later if you get pregnant so that the embryo will have a nice cushiony place to implant. So that's another function of your estrogen other than to make you sexy females. Now, the pituitary on about day 14 of your cycle will put out a surge of another hormone called LH. LH stands for luteinizing hormone. You don't have to know the names of these hormones. LH is good enough. And LH tells the follicle to release the egg. So the follicle releases the egg boop, on about day 14 in response to the LH. And we call that ovulation. Have you ever heard that word?
Mm-hmm.
You ovulate on about day 14 of your cycle.
Isn't it good if you're trying to get pregnant to have sex when you're ovulating?
When you're ovulating, that's the only time you can get pregnant. So you keep, and your body temperature goes up a little bit when you ovulate. So if you keep your temperature, and all of a sudden it spikes to 100, from 98.6, then you know that's your day of ovulation. And then this egg, if it's fertilized by sperm, will flow through on its way to the uterus. And we're not done. The follicle is not done. These cells that we're releasing estrogen, they remain even after the egg is released. The follicular cells remain, and they squirt out another hormone called progesterone. And the progesterone tells the walls of the uterus to grow a bunch of blood vessels in them. So now we got a thick, bloody wall of the uterus. Isn't that gross? It's about to get grosser. So the progesterone, the estrogen tells the walls to get thick. The progesterone tells the walls to be bloody. And here comes the egg. And if the egg implants, you'll grow a baby. But if you didn't have sex, I know it's a stretch for a lot of ladies, but let's pretend they didn't have sex. It's a joke, I'm making jokes. Then this egg will have died and won't come down here. And it doesn't implant in the walls. And if it doesn't implant in the walls, these walls are going to break down. And all of these walls will break down, and all the material, blood and cells, rush out of the vagina, and that's your period. And after your period, the whole thing starts over. FSH is released again. A new follicle starts to develop. Estrogen is released again. The walls will build back up. This happens every month, y'all, for about 30 years. 35 years. And once you're about 50 or 55, you'll go through menopause where you just stop releasing these hormones.
How does birth control work?
What's that?
How does birth control work?
Birth control interferes with these hormones, and different types of birth control works different ways. But
does it kill the egg so it can't implant?
That's a good. It's something you should Google. I'm not exactly sure. I know it interferes with the hormones, but I'm not exactly sure what it does. You need these. So you need LH, for instance, to ovulate. Maybe it interferes with LH. I'm not exactly sure. That's a good question. I need to look that up.
How does abortion work?
Abortion is when the baby's developing here. They go in with a physical thing that looks like a back scratcher. And they stick it up there and they scrape the walls of the uterus. And the baby that's developing there gets scraped off.
That's seriously all I do.
That's all they do.
Oh.
They anesthetize you so it doesn't hurt, and then they go in there and they scrape the walls of the
They
uterus.
haven't developed any better way to do it since the.
Yeah, they've developed a way better way. There's a pill that'll kill the fetus, but it's illegal. They'd rather have you do surgery, which often ends up, you can't have a baby after that because they damage the walls of the uterus. They'd rather have you do that than take a pill. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, why don't they allow you to take the pill?
Ask the politicians and the people who root against it. I don't know. They don't want you killing embryos, but
I don't think they want
people do it the other way anyway.